morning, all of you, and thank you for joining us on this Friday morning for this exciting webinar on unpacking employee experience in partnership with Oracle. I am Nishant from People Matters, and before speaking about today's agenda, I'll take you through the brief. I'll introduce you to the speakers and, of course, our partners, Oracle. So, as a part of ongoing efforts to bring you some different perspectives on talent, in this fourth season of Let's Talk Talent, a modern HR seasonal in association with Oracle, we are discussing decoding employee experience. We are bringing to you a series of webinars with leading voices from the industry, sharing their expertise and views on ways to provide the best employee experience in order to increase their workforce productivity and mental satisfaction. This webinar discusses unpacking employee experience. While a new generation of digital natives takes over the workforce, the challenge in front of talent leaders is to re-engineer experiences that these professionals have outside of their work. This means providing consumer-grade experiences for driving employee mood, engagement, and behavior. In this webinar, we will discuss how smart organizations are approaching the challenge to deliver unique experiences for their customers with an exclusive focus on the manufacturing industry. Let me also take you through some of the key focus areas that we are going to discuss today. So one of them is why should you re-engineer engagement to experience? And secondly, how smart companies drive employee mood, engagement, and behavior using key insights from intelligent and real-time technology. And the third point, basically, that we're going to discuss is employee experience in the manufacturing sector and how to boost productivity there. So I will now introduce you to the speaker for this webinar, and we have the privilege of having with us Shakun Khanna, the Senior Director of HCM Strategy and Transformation at Oracle. Shakun is a leading human capital management and an expert executive coach in Asia and serves as Senior Director, HCM Strategy and Transformation at Oracle Corporation. Prior to joining Oracle, Shakun was the CEO of Right Management in India and Middle East, and over the last 2 decades, he has been a consultant to many Fortune 500 organizations on areas of talent management, organization design and transformation, and employee engagement. Shakun carries a rich experience of managing businesses for global organizations like Gallup Inc., IBM, Smarter Workforce, the Tata Group, Manpower, etc. in various leadership roles. As an inquisitive traveler and an avid leader, Shakun is greatly inspired by Dr. Stephen Covey and Donald Clifton, which instills in him a great passion to transform organizations for the betterment of human capital. So let me also introduce you to our partner today, Oracle. So Oracle is shifting complexity from IT and moving it out of the enterprise by engineering hardware and software to work together in the cloud and in the data center. In India, Oracle works with more than 7,000 customers and over 600 partners across private, public, and government sectors. It employs over 41,000 professionals operating in various businesses, namely Sales and Marketing, Oracle India Development Center, Oracle Consulting, Oracle Direct Sales, Global Support Center, Global Financial Information Center, and Oracle Financial Services Software Limited. Oracle has been in India for over 25 years. It has 9 offices across the country, 11 R&D centers, and 1 Partner Solution Center. About 315,000 students and more than 1,100 learning institutions benefit from Oracle Academy program annually in India. Also, at the end of this webinar, we have some time that we have kept apart for you to ask questions to the speaker today, Shakun, and he will actually answer those questions at the end of the webinar.
So I will hand over the webinar microphone to Shakun so that he can take it forward.
Thank you so much. So ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this session on unpacking employee engagement and experience. As Nishant mentioned, I've spent almost 1.5 decades understanding about employee engagement to start with, and I have also tracked how the whole science and art of engaging employees is changing. Today, we are going to talk about how experience the employee impacts mood, behavior, and engagement. Specific focus today would be around the manufacturing sector, because I believe while a lot of work has been done in understanding and managing employee engagement in the services sector in the more contemporary form, the manufacturing sector is really struggling around what does it mean for the sector, because the patterns there are different. So while we will be talking about experience in general, I would specifically emphasize on how it is manifesting itself in the employees for the manufacturing sector as well. I will be speaking for about 30 odd minutes or so. Thereafter, I'll leave about 15 minutes for any questions that you may have. And if there are questions that are unanswered, we can follow it up with deeper one-on-one engagements. First question comes that why is it that we need to relook at the subject of employee engagement, or we need to relook at employee experience as a central focus area for managing human capital and, more importantly, the productivity in the world of work. Now, over the last 5 years, the world of work has dramatically evolved. Now, one of the arguments could be that the world of work is ever-evolving space. Yes, of course it is. But the velocity of change and evolution in the last 5 years has been phenomenal and has been unforeseen ever in the history of, the corporate world. It is said that the corporate world is about 400 years old in the current format. And within these 400 years that we have had this form of business organization existing, the evolution has been most dramatic. The impact of this evolution is very, very significant. First of all, there is a huge exodus of talent from organization. The reason being that the average time that an individual chooses to spend in an organization has significantly reduced. The whole socio-emotional meaning of loyalty and longevity of career has changed. It is estimated that about 50% of people in Asia will seek a job change in about next 12 months. So what does it mean? It means that the world of work at any given point in time will have 50% people who are working in their current jobs for a tenure of less than 1 year. It also means that more and more organizations will have to relook at how do they create the stickiness for these people, and also how do they change their systems, processes, and people strategies to continue to work with a workforce which is perpetually less than a year old in their organization. The other piece that we are seeing is that the gross number of qualified workers is significantly reducing. It is expected that about 40% of the baby boomers will exit the workforce in next 4 to 7 years. And this, unfortunately, is not getting replaced with millennials. Millennials clearly have a different view on the work. Majority of them, as high as about 63%, want to work either in the gig economy as freelancers or contingent workers, or they want to work on their own as entrepreneurs or individuals. If we look at a country like India, it is estimated that about 4 million professionals will start pursuing almost full-time livelihood creation from the gig economy, which essentially means that people are working part-time or working in multiple jobs and so on and so forth. Now, this pattern has a significant bearing on the manufacturing industry, because manufacturing per se as a sector would have different expectations from its workforce, and the way it adapts to these changing environments would be also significantly different. So one of the things is very clear, that most of you all, specifically in the manufacturing space, will have to relook at your talent strategy to understand how you can start engaging part-time or contingent workers more specifically in the line kind of an environment. So that will be critical. Clearly, employees are not employees anymore. And I love to say that employees are customers who buy work opportunities using the currency of talent. Now, this is a very important piece here, because what we are saying is that gone are the days when employers could follow a patriarchal approach simply because they were the providers of livelihood. Today, there are more opportunities available for the talented people to earn their livelihood using their talent. And that leaves us as employers on alert, because we now are facing shortage of people. Now, this is significantly dichotomous, because as a human race, we are in a zone where the population is at all-time high. The number of employable people is at an all-time high. But it's the sheer size of the economy and the number of opportunities available that are making us fight for that talent. So what it means is that when we talk about these employees, A, choosing our respective organizations to buy opportunities from us, and B, working in a very engaged manner with us, we'll have to relook the way we treat them. We will have to relook the way our policies and systems are created. and look at how we are treating our customers, So in fact, the latest research says that you have to treat employees as customers, in certain cases even better than the customers, to be able to generate the kind of impact that you want them to create. So having an engaged workforce is not a differentiator anymore. It is actually a survival imperative today. 10 years ago, when I used to work for Gallup, we used to talk about how engagement leads to creation of a great workplace and not just a normal or an average workforce. Since then, the world of work has changed so much that today, if you do not have a workforce that is highly engaged, your organization will have a very, very low chance of surviving the tenure of 3 to 5 years, because that's a survival imperative today. Why is it important? Because research shows that engaged employees put discretionary effort. And when we talk about putting discretionary effort, we essentially mean that these are the employees who go that extra mile, who use their own wisdom and their own discretion to do things that have clearly bearing on the outcomes that they are able to produce for the organization. In the disruptive world that we are living in, if your employees are not putting discretionary effort, we will not be able to generate the kind of competitive edge that is required for an organization to be able to survive in today's scenario. In fact, research shows that when employees put discretionary effort, there is 12% higher customer satisfaction. 78% of employees who are highly engaged are likely to recommend the products and services of their own company. 67% are likely to advocate their companies publicly. And remember, in the age of social media, this is a very, very critical point. If our employees are not advocating us publicly, then it has a huge share of voice in the market, and that clearly has impact on multiple things that the businesses want as an outcome. And specifically in the manufacturing sector, it is seen that there are much lesser safety incidents when the employees are engaged. In fact, as high as 48% lower safety incidents, which is clearly a manufacturing phenomenon. So no organization today can afford to let go of this kind of an impact that employee engagement is considering. A few months ago, when I wrote this article about employee experience, the thought that we were researching at that point in time was that employee engagement is almost a new synonym for employee engagement. The employee experience is the new synonym of employee engagement. And since then, we've done a lot of research, and we have found that today engagement is an outcome of very different factors than it was a couple of years ago. So what are these? Research is clearly showing that it is the mood of the employee, the experience of the employee, and the performance of the employee at work, which is leading to engagement. Simply because we have moved from a need-based working culture to a choice-based working culture. What it means is that work is not a necessity anymore, or let me put it this way, full-time work is not a necessity anymore for people. So there is a much larger bearing on how I feel at work, how I experience at work, and more importantly, how I am able to perform at work. Because organizations are playing a much larger role in driving the moods of people, experiences of people, and the performance of people. So clearly, when we are looking at having employees who are engaged, we'll have to bear in mind that all these three factors, experience, mood, as well as performance, are being impacted by technology today. So technology is the most potent lever of driving experience, performance, or mood, which impacts engagement directly. And when we look at smart organizations have realized it, and they are using it to their advantage and in a very different manner. Now, when I am saying technology is most potent lever, let me reiterate that it is not the only lever. A lot of times we have seen that in the current context, a lot more emphasis is being put on technology, but it is not just technology alone. We'll have to relook at the way we relook at creating experience for employees. Now, traditionally, majority of the school of thoughts around employee engagement say that engagement is led by the manager. And a lot of emphasis has been put on the role that manager plays. Of course, the entire Gallup's Q12 model, which is essentially the foundation on which the whole science of employee engagement is based, was driven by or is driven by managers. Now, the importance of manager pretty much remains there, but it has got company now. Earlier on, it was largely the managers that used to drive it. Today, it is more experience driven. Now, when we say experience driven, there are multiple factors around which the employee is assessing his or her experience. So just to clarify, in the older world, the employee was largely assessing his or her experience around the manager, around the conditions which manager was expected to, supposed to, as well as capable of impacting. But today, manager is just one spoke in the wheel. So when we look at employee experience, the first and the most critical part of experience is around enablement. Do your employees feel enabled enough to perform? Again, technology definitely can play a very important role in enablement, but it is not the be-all and end-all of it. In fact, in earlier days, engagement and enablement were treated as two parts of performance management or driving performance. But today, enablement clearly has an impact on experience. So when we talk about, for example, manufacturing sector, the way you enable employees is not just by giving them materials and equipment, but also enabling a feeling of being in control. So we talk about choice around flexi working, those kind of things. So they will be very, very critical. The other critical lever of experience is the manager. Now, why manager comes second to enablement? Because manager also needs enablement in the first place to be able to give the right kind of experience to his or her team. And that is also very critical. The third piece would be around systems and processes. Now, no matter how empowered or enabled your people are, no matter how well trained your managers are, unless and until the systems and processes are aligned to creating that simplified experience, it's not going to work. And when we talk about systems and processes, the key word here is simple systems and processes. Today, employees want that the work should be done in minimum time and minimum steps. Often, when processes, and more so in the manufacturing space, when processes are automated or technology is implemented to manage manufacturing processes, it becomes complicated. So right from the applications that we choose to the way systems are set up, the focus has to be on simplicity to drive the right kind of experience. Now, with simplicity comes a feeling of empowerment. If there are complex systems and processes, people do not feel empowered enough to be able to do their work. And of course, there are other elements also. So when we are looking at creating experience or can we think that conducive experience for employees, understanding how they are experiencing empowerment would also be very, very significant. The next piece is essentially around the experience with strategy. Most of the organizations fail to create a direct linkage between the strategy and the day-to-day activity that an employee is talking about. So if the strategy is to create impact on environment, say for example in a manufacturing industry, but the focus is at the shop floor on enhancing productivity, there is a gap. People don't experience alignment between strategy and what is expected of them, which then deteriorates the experience of the individuals. Alongside strategy, values play a very, very critical and important role. A lot of times when I go to organizations working as a consultant there, I find that people clearly see a disconnect between the way they experience transactions and what the stated values of an organization are. So as HR leaders, we will have to find ways and means to make sure that the stated values and experience around those values is consistent. One of the values that every organization talks about is collaboration. However, getting the collaboration rolling at the shop floor is one of the biggest challenges that most of the organizations are facing, not just in the manufacturing environment, but across the globe. Good collaboration or bad collaboration will lead to a specific kind of an experience, which then has a clear impact on people taking that discretionary effort, or in other words, being engaged in work on that. But lastly, and this is important, about 7 years ago when I used to lead Connect Science for the Indian market, we realized that work-life balance is not even a priority area specifically for the employees in Asia and more so in India. But today, work-life balance has emerged as one of the key drivers of employee engagement. So what is the experience that we are able to create around work-life balance for employees is going to be very critical. Remember, 4 million people are choosing work-life balance over full-time career opportunities by entering into the gig economy. And this is going to just increase. So this will be important. So what I am trying to convey here is that when we are looking at experience, let us not just confine ourselves with whether the offices or factory infrastructure is good enough or whether the UI of the applications that we are using is good enough. When you talk about employee experience, look at it around these 9 dimensions to be able to create a holistic experience. Then and only then it will have a bearing on employee engagement, thereby leading to the business outcome that the whole thing processes. Now, when we talk about employee enablement, clearly has a significant impact on employee engagement. Our research shows that wherever employees feel enabled, they are almost 2 times more engaged than their other counterparts who don't feel enabled. And when we talk about enablement, there are 3 fundamental expectations that employees today have from their workplaces or from their employers. First of all, they don't want to wait for something. If I join a new organization, I do not have the patience to go through long-drawn processes to feel enabled. Everybody wants it here and now. We are living in a generation where everything is self-service, which also means that I don't have to depend on anybody, thereby reducing the wait time. So whatever enablement mechanisms you or your organizations are designing, the first principle of design should be that employees don't have to wait. The other thing is that employees don't have to search. Gone are those days where employees were happy putting effort in digging for information. Today, they want it to be delivered. So look at how your systems and processes are making sure that employees are not expected to search for something. It is delivered to them as and when they need it. In some cases, even before they need it. And finally, and this may sound very dichotomous also, people don't want to learn anymore. They want systems, processes, techniques, and skills to be dumbed down so much or to be simplified so much that it becomes very, very intuitive. Remember, all of us became so good at using things like Facebook or Google without having to learn anything. It is almost as if these applications have taught themselves to us themselves. And that's where, when we look at creating organizational learning or creating enablement processes and systems, we need to make sure that these 3 tests are passed by such initiatives that you do. Employees don't have to wait, employees don't have to search, and employees don't have to learn. And then and only then, people feel that their experience around enablement is to their expectation. And of course, again, as I mentioned, technology plays a very, very critical and important role in all these 3 things. Employees today do not want to be dependent on a particular place of work or a particular time of work. So they want to be able to do work whenever they choose, from wherever they choose. Now, while it may be simpler for some other verticals or industries, in manufacturing it could pose a slight bit of challenge. What we have seen is that except for the shop floor workers who have to show up at the plant side or at the site of manufacturing, again, there's a lot of work within the manufacturing also that can be enabled through flexi working. So it is high time, even in India, that organizations in the manufacturing start looking at how they can enable flexi working. Needless to say, technology can really, really play a very important role in that. Now, when we talk about flexi working, it is also important that from a functionality perspective, everything has to be complete. Now, there was a time when there was partial flexi working, which essentially means that there are certain transactions or certain aspects of your work that can be delivered from a remote application or a remote location, but for other things, you have to show up at work. Gone are those days. Whenever we talk about any kind of flexi working environment, employees expect that all sorts of functionality is available to them from wherever they choose and on a real-time basis. Lastly, everything has to be intuitive and prescriptive. Simply because people are choosing to work in isolation sometimes or are choosing to work from environments either in context of time or space where they could be alienated from the rest of the workforce, it is critical that all the enablement mechanisms are very, very intuitive and also prescriptive so that they can solve the problems that the employees face. So that's a critical piece. The other thing around creating the right kind of experience is how do we go about empowering the managers. Now, for decades, we have put the burden of engaging the employees on the managers. There are organizations as well as philosophies that say that it is largely the role of the manager to empower or engage their teams and their employees. But grossly, organizations have failed to empower the managers with the right kind of information, the right kind of enablement. Now, when we talk about empowering managers, the first and the most important thing is that are our managers having a 360-degree view of the employees? Most of the managers today are dependent upon self-discovery when it comes to understanding employees, and some of them may not be really good at it. Remember, our managers may not have background in psychology or HR to be able to assess individuals completely. The employees, on the other hand, expect the managers and the organizations to know them in and out. And that's where I think organizations have to play a very, very important role by ensuring the managers have the right kind of view of the employees, not just of things that are important and traditionally have been captured like, say, competencies, performance, education, and so on and so forth, but more and more other things like their interests, their aspirations, their expectations, what are they doing in their social time, what are their passion and purposes in life, and so on and so forth. The other piece would be that are there integrated platforms available? So while for long organizations have said that a manager needs to have a holistic view of the employee, the fact of the matter remains that most of the organizations fail to provide a single integrated view of the employee to the managers. And then it is kind of foolhardy to put the blame or put the accountability of employee engagement on the managers. So organizations will have to be able to provide that. The other piece would be to provide real-time employee insight. For those of you who were at the Oracle Open World a couple of weeks ago and were part of the session that I conducted, we are today talking about things like mood sensors that can actually flag people and help managers to get insights about the employees. As the span of control of managers increase, it is humanly very, very difficult for them to be able to track all that is impacting the mood, thereby the behavior and hence the performance of employees. So can we have mechanisms in place within the organizations that will help managers get real-time insights about the employees? Today, technology enables that. Specifically, if you look at Oracle technology, which is way, way ahead of all our peers within the industry, it is not just intuitive and real-time, but it is also prescriptive. So managers can get to understand what is it a particular employee is going through, what is the challenge or the issue, and more importantly, what is the solution for the manager, so that the manager completely feels empowered and completely feels enabled to be able to go and take care of that employee. So that's the second important piece. The third important thing around employee experience, as I mentioned earlier, is around fostering collaboration. Now, a whole lot of activities have happened. A whole lot of things are done in the name of team building and collaboration. Yet the fact remains that the impact of real-time collaboration is still minuscule in the corporate world as a whole. Now, the way collaboration is managed is also really changing, because as we are moving from a PC world to a digital world today. In fact, that technology has always played an important role in the way human beings communicate. Communication is the fundamental to driving collaboration. Now, from the PC era to the digital age, the way we are communicating is significantly changed. So from emails, we went to messengers and web conferencing, then we went to open sharing, streaming, blogging. In the cloud world, it was bring your own device, virtual office. Mobility had a very, very clear focus. And now we are entering into the age of natural language processing, work stream collaboration, IoT and things like that. Now, what is happening is that while technology is changing at a rapid phase, the habits of people are not necessarily changing at the same space. There are people who still want to communicate through email. A person like me still wants to pick up the phone and talk face-to-face or, have the element of voice involved. So if we have to foster collaboration in current kind of an environment, we will have to not necessarily imbibe the latest technologies, but also have to see how we can take care of the habits of individuals and people. In fact, a very interesting research shows that by 2020, organizations that will support choose your own work style will have a significant advantage in retaining their employees. And I think there was a question around, does employee engagement or experience has an impact on retention? The answer to the question is yes, of course. Employee engagement has a very strong bearing on your ability to retain employees. Now, the world is moving towards a situation where people are not adapting to the culture, but they want to choose their work culture. So what does it mean? It means that the organizations have to be ready structurally as well as from an ecosystem perspective to be able to support all sorts of cultures simultaneously. So if I'm a person who still likes to use emails versus you who's more IoT-driven kind of a person, our organization will have to make sure that from an enablement perspective, both of us are able to do and choose the way we want to do our work at the same time. And organizations who will be able to do this will have a clear-cut advantage over the other peer organizations. If you look at why all this is happening, simply because well-being has become the most important priority for employees today. In fact, wherever organizations are focusing more on well-being, the productivity is much more higher. And this particular data is very, very significant in the manufacturing space, because manufacturing probably imbibed the importance of focusing on well-being much earlier than probably some of the other industries did. So we have seen that organizations that have structured well-being initiatives see as high as 49% higher productivity and 32% lower sick leaves. When we talk about managing well-being, today, three things are very critical. Wearable devices are becoming more and more important in managing well-being. Last week I was in Singapore and we were looking at what is it that Oracle is bringing next in the HR space specifically. So we are working on IoT and specifically wearable devices that can actually sense if enough movement is happening of people. Can you remotely track if a worker has become unconscious inside a mine, for example, which could be fatal, So a whole lot of work is being done around that piece. And, something that started with safety gear like helmets or shoes being provided to workers has now reached the level of sophistication where intelligent devices are available which are not only able to give them physical safety but also do predictive analytics around it. So How does long-term exposure to certain condition impact the health of a individual is something that we can remotely track. And more employees are putting emphasis on that and are expecting right now, and in the near future will start demanding from the employees. Lastly, it's about the mood, and that's where the real challenge lies. How is it employers can impact the mood? The first thing would be, do we have the ability to assess the mood? By 2020, it is expected that almost 35% organizations will augment their employee engagement surveys with pulse, indirect, or inferred feedback to get comprehensive view of employee experience. The way bot technology, the way robotics technology, and the way IoT is moving, we are not far from a day when it will be possible for employers or organizations to gauge the moods of their individual employees and flag it to the managers so that they are able to do something about it. When I started my career, my manager or in fact, my father told me that once you get into your work, you should leave your mood and worries behind or outside the door. While at a philosophical level, this might be a great advice, but humanly it is not possible. I am driven by my emotions. I am driven by the endorphins that are running in my system. And at any given point in time, I will have to look at that. So more and more organizations will need to become more mindful of the moods of the employees so that not only they are able to understand what is driving different moods in the individuals, they are also at the same time able to do the things that will bring people in the right mood. Research shows that while an employee starting in a good mood may not necessarily continue with that, an employee starting the work with a bad mood will certainly have an impact on the work performance. So it's important. So the thing is not just about trying to get the person in the right mood, but also being able to identify when the mood of the person is not in the right frame and to be able to do something. So these are some of the new insights and some of the latest things that research is showing that we need to be mindful about when we are talking about enhancing employee experience in order to impact employee engagement, which then leads to employees putting more and more discretionary effort into the work that they do, which has a clear bearing on the outcome that they are able to produce. So as I said earlier, engaged workforce is not a differentiator anymore. It is a survival imperative for the organization. And engagement today is not just an outcome of what the manager is doing, but actually the overall 360-degree experience of the employee around those 9 factors that we mentioned earlier. I will pause the monologue here and definitely look at what questions you all have. So Nishant, I'm ready for any questions that would have come.
Thank you so much for taking us through those wonderful presentations and wonderful insights that you have shared today from various researches that you have put together. So I have a lot of questions with me. So I will start one by one. We have roughly like around 10-12 minutes to take those questions. The first question is, how do you define growth in a gig scenario when it comes to level or band promotions? Do you think it's irrelevant in this scenario to actually keep engagements, individuals engaged because they only leave some point or the other?
All right. Whoever asked this question, I think is a very, very intelligent question. And I also feel that a lot of people have this perception that this is irrelevant, but the fact is, no, it is not irrelevant. In fact, in the gig economy, it is even more complex thing to manage. So there are clearly 3 guidelines from my side in order to do that. Organizations have to find out a way to be able to bucket the assignments or the work, depending upon its complexity, to be given to different kinds of people. In the gig economy, it is very difficult to assess the dexterity level on a particular skill. So, for example, if you are looking at a video editor or you are looking at a computer programmer in the gig economy, trust me, you will find such a wide variety of people out there. and the compensation expectations would also be there. So when we say the organization has to be ready about the ready for the gig economy, organizations will have to devise systems and processes that enable managers to bucket assignments into clearly defined categories, which then can be tagged to the different levels of contingent workers, which then will be, catered to those kind of things. Now, whether you create a band there or you create categorization, that is absolutely for the organization to decide. But what I'm clearly advising here is that have categories defined of work depending upon the complexity and the importance of that work, pretty much like potential and performance that we used to do. And the other thing that is going to happen over a period of time is pretty much like, say, for example, we have open source rating of, say, on a TripAdvisor, for example, which actually gives you a rating of the kind of property that there are. I believe that the gig players will get into that kind of a zone where the recommendations and how your existing clients or customers have rated you will have that. So over a period of time, definitely it is going to move in that direction, and the organizations will have to start thinking today itself, how do they create ecosystem to be able to figure out who the right person in the gig economy would be. Organizations who are able to do that will also be able to attract more and talented people within the gig space as well. So that's where it is.
Thank you so much, Shakun. That question was from Nishant, not me, another Nishant. So the next question is from Sajeev. He's asking, is there a huge difference in what employees expect in a service organization versus a manufacturing setup? Because what he's saying that this is the same kind of people who are working in both the places, though like the levels may differ, but these are all human beings at the end. And probably both are tech driven, and manufacturing uses starting to use more automated technologies these days.
Again, a very interesting question, and the general perception is that there is a significant difference in the expectations. So when we talk about expectation, we will have to look at it that there are certain fundamental human expectations that remain consistent across the industries. What is happening, however, is that as the world of work is evolving, the expectations are changing. So if I go back about 100 years, performance management was not a expectation. It was a delight factor. Today, it has become a hygiene factor. Health insurance, mandatory leaves. These kind of things have evolved over a period of time. So pretty much like Maslow's need hierarchy, the expectations across the industries of the employees are pretty much the same. Their manifestation, however, is very, very different. So today what we are saying is the workplace has evolved so much that people are not anymore worried about fair compensation. That's a given. That's a hygiene today. But what people are more expecting today is some kind of flexibility. Now, the ability of an IT company to offer that flexibility could be much different than how flexibility manifests in a manufacturing organization. So at that level, it will be different. But fundamentally, the 9 factors that I earlier talked about are the new age employee expectations, consistent across sectors. Manifestation, however, is different.
Thank you so much, Shakun. I hope that answers your question, Sajeev. So next question, I'm actually combining a couple of questions here, which are on the similar lines. One question is from Rinky, who's asking, so in organizations, employees are not really the same, like in the sense everybody are different as an employee. So while designing their employee experience, what are the factors that we should consider? And the second part of that question would be in terms of saying that in a multi-generational workforce, while introducing digital employee engagement initiatives, what are the factors that needs to be kept in mind, and what is your general experience been?
So again, as I said, employees are not employees anymore. Let me repeat, employees are customers who buy work opportunity using the currency of talent. Now, if that is the definition that we are living by, it then becomes imperative for us to treat employees as customers. And when we are talking about treating customers, we don't treat customers differently depending upon who they are and what they buy. We do believe in giving a consistent customer experience across sectors and across categories. Of course, there would be subtleties there. So the first thing is that when we are talking about creating a digital experience or creating an experience for an employee, it has to be consistent across touch points. Now, touch points could differentiate, could be different, You may have a higher level of access than I have because simply you are at a different level than I am. That is fair. But from an overall experience perspective, it has to be consistent. So when we are talking about creating employee experience, please bear in mind, how would you go about creating customer experience, and how will you then differentiate that experience depending upon the sector or the segment of the customer? So that will be critical.
Thank you so much for taking that question. So another question from Shanta, who's asking how to really gauge employee experience as sometimes the traditional ways of doing it, like surveys or scattered information, manual analysis, and properly reactive measures, are not really working in the current scenario in an organization. So Shanta is asking, what are the other ways, or how do you fix it?
And I think this is a very pragmatic question we would have asked that, Shanta. Now, the best measure of experience is the usage of that. So, for example, if you have a new technology or an application that has been implemented, if people have a good experience around it, they will use more of it. If people do not have a good experience around it, they will not use it. Because that's what the app-driven world has told us. So even if I use multiple, taxi apps, and I would not name, some of them are much more engaging and they give a better experience and they have a much higher market share and much higher usability. So when you are trying to gauge the experience of an employee around any application, any service, or any policy that you have created, look at how many employees are engaging with it, how many employees are using it, and what is the repeat pattern around that. And that, to my mind, is the single most potent measure of experience, in addition to the usual, surveys and things like that you will continue to do.
Great. So that is a wonderful answer to that question. So another question is coming in from Namita, who's asking, it's a very interesting question again, in terms of saying that change in employee dynamics is inevitable. But how do we get a leadership team who are mostly, say, baby boomers or a very senior generation to accept this change in engagement of individuals, which is very rapid? Probably you're dealing with policies for millennials and the more Gen Y, Gen Z kind of workforce, but the people who are taking decisions are mostly baby boomers. So how do you manage that?
Okay, yes. So as you said, Sam, this is a very, very interesting question, and the balance 3 minutes that we have got at our hand today is grossly insufficient for me to answer this question. We will be dwelling upon this topic very, very deeply in a separate session. But that being said, here is the thing. I think there is a big misconception that there is a Gen X, there is a Gen Y, baby boomers, millennials, and all that stuff. To my mind, the workplace is divided into just two generations, the digital generation and the non-digital generation, period. So I may not be a millennial in terms of the year that I was born in, but when it comes to my behavior, specifically my behavior around the digital part, I may be millennial, or in some cases even ahead of the millennial generation. So leaders also will have to be divided into two categories. Leaders who are ready for the digital generation and leaders who are not. And some of the behaviors and mindsets that we are talking about are clearly there. So I think organizations, rather than only looking at upskilling leaders from a managing the millennial perspective, needs to clearly look at who are the ones who are attuned to the digital economy and who are the ones who are not. The competency frameworks, the assessments of those leaders, and the learning and development initiatives that we do will do that. And let me also tell you with a very heavy heart that a lot of leaders will fail to cross that chasm. To my mind, in the manufacturing sector, it will be even higher. Leaders are really struggling there to embrace the new way of working. So organizations will have to really spend a lot of time, energy, and effort to upskill their leaders. But while doing so, very quickly identify who are the ones which are just not able to cross the bridge and find ways and means of doing away with that. It may sound very curt and harsh, but that's the reality that we are living. So if you are not digital, you are on the verge of getting extinct as a leader. And of course, as I said, we will be dwelling upon this subject in greater detail in weeks to come. So watch out for this space.
Thank you so much, Shakun. Actually, this also, actually dovetails into a lot of discussion we have had in the past, and also about a lot of, pieces of articles that we have actually uploaded on Let's Talk Talent as a campaign, because we have basically been talking about how the digital natives and the earlier generations were different. So I think Let's Talk Talent will be a good place for all of you to actually just go through and start to get a lot of these questions answered. So I think that we are running out of time, and due to shortage of time, so I think we'll have to wrap it up right now. I still have a lot of questions in my hand, but unfortunately, I'll not be able to take it up right now. I'll try and get it
So,
answered
Nishant,
from Shakun offline.
Nishant, what I suggest to you is please send me those questions and I will answer those questions, and we can probably upload it on the People Matters site as a Q&A for everybody to look at. For others who
Yes.
want to get in touch with me, you can reach out to me on shakun.khanna@oracle.com or find me on LinkedIn or Twitter.
So thank you so much, Shakun, for spending time with us today, spending an hour today in spite of the busy schedule and sharing those wonderful insights. It was great listening to you again as always, and the insights and the research backed points that you bring in are always a pleasure to listen to. So thank you everybody who are on the webinar attending and listening, and everybody who asked questions. I hope I understand that there will be a lot more questions coming in, so please do write in to us and we'll be happy to get it answered to you. So thank you so much all of you for joining us today, and thank you Shakun, and also thank you to Oracle for making this happen. We will see you in another webinar soon after this one. Thank you all and have a great day.
Thank you. Have a great day and a great weekend. Bye-bye.